When Ken and I met in 1969, I was 26 and he was not. I had just begun to volunteer with the Fair Housing Council of the San Fernando Valley, and I was spending 1 or 2 days a week learning the ropes by working with Gail Heltzer, Barbara Schneier, and their boss, Celia Zager. In addition to learning everything I needed and wanted to know about fair housing, I quickly formed many cherished friendships, and many of them are here today. And although we no longer see each other, I will always remember the bond we shared in our passion for the mission of the Fair Housing Council. Some of them are gone, some of them are here today, and those who aren't are sharing spots in our heart with Ken. In addition to the many rewards, I'm grateful for knowing Gail and Murray Heltzer, Milton Barbara Schneier, Marianne and Ron Roelke, Gloria Miles, Loretta Kelly, Betsy and Rayford Johnson, Kathy and Terry Dooley, Ben Slayton, Celia Zager, Charlie Owens, Joan and Roger Lee, John and Ginny Benson, and Ken Kelly, and many others. While volunteering in the Fair Housing Council office, board members and other volunteers would come in and out, and I soon got to know them. My earliest impression was that some of them regarded Ken as an infallible god in the fair housing movement. I was 26 and easily impressed. I was mistaken about that whole infallibility thing, but it was obvious that Ken was highly respected by all. At that time, the Fair Housing Council office was located behind the Willwright's Ice Cream Parlor on Ventura Boulevard at Van Nuys Boulevard. I don't know how many of you remember it. I know the people I was sitting with remember it. I mention that arcane reference for the sentimental benefit of my love. Thank you. Okay, just so long. Tom and I moved to Taos, New Mexico in 2002. So I've been out of the loop for many years. To prepare for my remarks, I looked up the Fair Housing Council's website to see if it still existed. And it was without surprise that I saw that the work continues and the mission is the same. However, I am disappointed that the history and purpose menu item makes no mention of Ken Kelly, Loretta Kelly, and the others who were so important to the early days of fair housing. But to my surprise, I was pleased to see that Loretta Kelly is still a member of the board of directors, which is some sort of record for length of service. She represents the incalculable value of institutional memory to the organization. If she has a memory, I don't. I wonder if the others recognize Loretta's importance to their very existence. And I wonder what happened to all those cartons of photos, news clippings, and papers from the early days. Racial discrimination is hardly a thing of the past, and I remember that at the end of my own tenure in the early 2000s, those who would discriminate in housing practices became more sophisticated in their methods, making the violations of law even more challenging to prove. It's just as well that I have moved on. At my age, I don't think my heart could withstand dealing with these hateful perpetrators. Over the years of my tenure at the Fair Housing Council, my involvement grew to include volunteer checking, which is the investigation of suspected cases of housing discrimination, various paid staff positions, and more years than I can recall as a member or officer of the board of directors. In all those years, the board of directors was never without Ken Kelly as a member. I don't remember if he was president of the board when we met in 1969, but he served in that position more than one time over the years, and I did my own stint as president for 2 terms in the late 1980s. I hope his decades of leadership and involvement will always be remembered with the reverence he deserves. Whether or not you've seen the film When Harry Met Sally, many of you are familiar with its most famous scene. But there is an earlier scene in the movie with great relevance to Ken and me. Toward the beginning, when Harry and Sally are still anathemas to each other, Harry informs her that men and women can never be friends. He asserts that romance and sex will always interfere with the possibility of a meaningful platonic relationship between a man and a woman. Ken's and my relationship was not romantic, but we loved each other. And it was the most cherished of friendships. What Harry didn't know was Kenneth Kelly. I think you'd agree that Ken had more friends than anyone you've ever known, which was not an accident. And I'm sure I was not the only woman to count him as a close friend. Ken intuitively understood, as I think most men don't, that a valuable friendship must be nurtured. He cultivated and nourished his friendships with both men and women, as only women usually do. He shared his feelings, he listened, he made the effort to spend time with his friends, but most of all, he understood the value of enriching his own life by maintaining quality friendships. I want to read that again, because I feel it's my responsibility to Ken to share his perspective on friendships. He understood the value of enriching his own life by maintaining quality friendships. Men can learn from women, or from Ken, that for meaningful friendships to flourish, some effort is required. Each of you is Ken's friend, and you know how important you were to him. Ken had friends from every aspect of his life, but friendship between those of us who worked together at the Fair Housing Council were more than incidental. We became a family, in no small part due to Ken's inspiration and influence on us all. We worked together on fundraisers and countless other committees. We had family picnics. We met and socialized in each other's homes. And we formed lasting friendships forged by the strong bond of working toward the same goal of equal housing opportunities. I don't know if the others were even aware of the special and exclusive friendship that developed between Ken and me. We were there for each other at the happy times and the tragic times. But our friendship was defined by the more than 30 years of monthly lunches we shared. Ken and I had lunch together hundreds of times, and each time we struggled to remember who had paid the last time so we could maintain our unspoken agreement to alternate. Ken liked fancier places than me, and I now suspect it was because he enjoyed having one cocktail with lunch. Always a rusty nail, whatever that is. I recently had a revelation that he chose restaurants if they had a bar. Stephen agrees. This is a photo of Ken and me at his favorite restaurant, Bistro Garden. And I think Ann told me it recently closed. If you were ever with him at Bistro Garden, you saw that everyone knew him well there, from the parking valets to the maitre d' and to all the servers. No matter where we met for lunch, we had no shortage of topics to discuss. We talked about our lives, our families, our mutual friends, our work, his inventions, which I did not understand, our histories, our shared politics, but mostly our feelings. However, we did not discuss our spouses until he met Anne. I don't remember his exact words, but he described it as if a thunderbolt had struck them simultaneously. According to him, he and Anne had everything going against them. And the fact that she lived in Michigan and he lived in California was the least of their obstacles. However, I quickly saw how excited he would get as travel to see her neared. And within a short time, those trips began to be more frequent. He spoke of Anne endlessly, and even though I hadn't met her, his remarks about their significant differences led me to believe that they would never wind up together. When he told me he was getting married, I thought he meant to someone other than Anne. After they married and Anne moved to California with her adorable son, Stephen, I realized how hard it must have been for her. Not only did she leave her career, her home, her family, and her friends, she entered Ken's whirlwind social life, which was filled with strangers to her. I don't know how she adapted to Ken's friendship with me. He and I saw each other often, and only rarely were Anne and Tom included. During the last 19 years, with 1,000 miles between Ken and me, our communication was limited to emails and phone calls. And towards the end, when he no longer used email, we resorted to his technological preference of texting, which I hated. How many characters? 44? Fortunately, Ken and Anne made several annual visits to Tom and me in Taos. As they arrived each year, I saw Ken's waning vitality and acuity, combined with his stubbornness to accept the depredations of old age. But in between, and since their visits ended, it was my great fortune that Anne always kept me apprised of his surgeries, hospitalizations, and general decline. I came to respect and appreciate the difficulty for Anne of not only caring for Ken, but witnessing the deterioration of her brilliant and once strong partner. Out of my empathy for her and her generosity to me, she and I became friends. It's yet another gift I received from Ken. Tom and I have wonderfully full lives in Taos, New Mexico, filled with deep and genuine friendships we made through gratifying community involvement. But I will never again have what Ken and I had. I am 78 now, and Ken is not.